Good evening, everyone. Today we have Mr. Kaushik Mitra on the podcast, and the podcast for today is Lessons from the Boardroom: Building a Career That Lasts. And sir, to start off, you've spent 3 decades in the industry. So, was this book something that you always wanted to write, or did the idea emerge from what you saw happening around you?
Yeah, I think this book is, my way of telling me 30 years back my avatar of things that I wished I knew or somebody had told me. And so it's a combination of, what uh, what we are taught in our schools and colleges and universities, uh, and and what really happens in the professional world, right? So this book is meant to be, you know, a mentor for folks who are either starting off their career, people like you who are going to embark on your corporate journey, your professional journey. This is meant to be something which you probably will be able to complement your learning so far, and uh, something that you'll be able to actually implement as you get into the workforce. So this book is meant to be a guide, and it is a practical tool for all of you to use as you get into the workspace. So yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of inspiration from my experiences over 3 decades in different cultures, different parts of the world, and most of my lessons, I would say, and most of my learning has been working with people. And while yes, we have qualifications which get us into the playing area, but what you really need to build long-term successful careers, you learn as you embark on that journey. So it's the experiential part which probably will help complement, the learning that you all are going through.
Thank you for sharing that, sir. So, basically, the idea emerged when you were working at PepsiCo. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I've been working for more than 3 decades now, and I've worked with 7, 8 companies in the first 10 years, and the last 24 years has been with one company. So,
Mhm.
yeah, you can say a lot of it is PepsiCo. A lot of the book is also about PepsiCo in terms of stories, etc. But uh, I've also worked with Indian companies. I worked with the Goenkas. I worked with the Tatas. I've worked with GE, Reckitt Benckies, all these companies. So again, different cultures, different management styles. Those have helped bring to bear some of the lessons that are there in the book.
Okay, sir. So, as you mentioned, that this book is for everyone, for students, for young professionals, for mid-career leaders. So, how do you suggest that a person pick up this book at what stage of their life? I mean, would you like, when would it be most effective in their career?
Look, the way the book is structured is it's in 4 parts, and it builds. So the first part is something that is applicable to pretty much everybody, and that part is all about how do you develop yourself. And what I've realized is, we are all like pencils, and we need to be sharpened every once and here and now as the pencil becomes blunt, and that applies to different stages of your career. So uh, how you develop yourself, and the first chapter of the book talks a little bit about learning and learning agility. Now that's relevant for folks like you who are still on campus, people who are at different levels of their careers, because even today I'm learning. I have a 25-year-old son, and he's a software engineer in San Francisco, and every conversation with him is reverse mentoring. So learning never stops. And one of the most important ingredients and criteria for long-term success is having that what the Japanese call soshin, which is a beginner's mind. So the first part is relevant for everybody. The second part is really relevant when you get into, and that I think, which is it's all about working with people, and that's what the second part is. And that is relevant for folks who are just stepping into industry or at different parts of their career, mid career professionals actually, early and mid career professionals. Because when you start, you are focused on delivering results yourself. And you're focused on individual performance and individual brilliance. But as you progress in career, what you realize is success depends more around people that you're working with. And therefore, things like how do you influence, things like how do you build trust become very, very important. So, the second part is probably the most important aspect of long term professional success because that this is not an exam where you individually will learn something and do well. You have to take others along. So, learning to take others along, learning to work with people and the different facets of that in an organizational context is, I think, the most powerful piece for success, right? And then that's again relevant to folks who are at different levels. People who are starting off, they can still focus on being individual performers, but folks who are aiming to be, middle management and senior management, they need to really it's really meant for them. And the third part again is meant for everybody. The third part is about how do you get things done? Because, okay, you develop yourself, you're working with people, but at the end of the day, success will depend, again, as I said, not about you, but success will depend on delivery, right? And performance. And so, what are the elements of performance? So, in the book, I tease out a few aspects. The first part is execution, and I have a full chapter on the 6 Ds of execution. We can talk about it a little later. That's pretty much meant for everyone, right? And then there's another chapter which is probably very dear to my heart, which I call inspirational leadership. And those are things which really, when you get to middle to senior level management, you really need to imbibe those aspects of how you inspire others. And the fourth part of the book is more for finance professionals because I went to the publisher. I didn't have the fourth part, and Penguin is the top the number one publisher in the world, and they said you are a CFO, so you need to write something for the finance students and for the folks in their finance career that they build to CFO. So I put that in, but it's not about technical stuff. It's more about the things that finance leaders need to build if they want to get to a CFO role and be successful in their finance careers. So again, it's about things like communication. I've seen very, very good finance professionals, but they're not able to communicate effectively, right? It's about having that shareholder mindset. Because at the end of the day, the CFO job is all about creating shareholder value. So things like that. It's really not accounting and tax, but it's more about leadership traits in finance.
Absolutely, I absolutely agree with you, sir, on that. And so one thing that I wanted to ask you is that was there any career blind spot you believe that most professionals suffer from today in today's time?
Yeah, I think, and I suffered from it when I started. We were always aspiring to do two, three things. One is we wanted coveted roles, and therefore we were all looking, let's say, for a strategy role, or let's say a merchant banking role. I'm talking, let's say, finance, right? Or if you're a marketing professional, you really want something more on the creative side, or you want an aspirational brand, and so on and so forth. Now, that is one fallacy and one blind spot and one myth that I want to bust because a professional career straddles decades. So you are like 35, 40 years, right? I would build, it's like constructing a house, right? So you don't construct the house by getting to the top floor. There is no top floor, right? You construct the foundation first. And therefore, professionals who really get to the top, who do well, who build long term sustainable careers, are the ones who build very strong foundations. And when you are young, when you're starting, that is what you should focus on. And foundation creation and foundation work is, below the surface. People don't even see you. It's like, those nice, fancy, cruise liners. What you see are the fancy decks on top, but there are, 10 decks below, and you start in the boiler room. I started in the boiler room, right? And so I would urge all of you also to forget the fancy designations and the fancy, corporate jobs, corporate office job, and go work in a factory. Go work in a sales office. Dirty your hands understanding the consumer, and dirty your hands understanding supply chain. Really, where the nuts and bolts of the business happens. And I'm talking about a brand innovation make sell deliver company, and it applies to other industries as well. Build your foundation rather than trying to get to the fancy jobs quickly, right? Because a weak foundation will not help you succeed, and you don't have a second chance of building a foundation, right? So that's the first thing. The other thing I would say is it normally takes about a year for somebody to understand a job or a role, and then it's in the second year and maybe the third year that you are able to deliver and give back to the organization. Now, typically, when as employees and when we are young, we forget that there is a company before there is us. And it's only when you get to lead teams and when you get to middle to senior management, you understand the importance of giving back to the organization. So people are in a hurry to move from one role to another role to another role, in short spans of time. Now that's a myth, and that doesn't help. Neither the employee, because the experience is not fully baked, nor the company, because you're not able to do justice to what the company wants you to do, why you get paid a salary for, right? So be patient, and you must do your stint. You must earn your stripes. Okay. I'm not saying, it's a bureaucratic setup, but you need that minimum time in roles to really uh, do justice to the experience yourself, and then, you know more importantly, for the company. Because at the end of the day, for senior leaders, when we choose people, we don't see people who have, kept on moving and hop jobs and jump jobs and things like that. We look for consistency in performance. We look for people who have gone out of their comfort zone, people who have failed but learned from it and come back strongly, right? So we look for foundation, we look for resilience, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. Yeah. So don't be in a hurry to get to the top. Build your foundation. Don't be in a hurry to, change jobs. Earn the respect of the organization and add value to the organization. That's why you are there.
I agree to that, sir. So, when I started my journey, just to give an example,
Yeah.
I started working with Decathlon. So, I used to work in the sports department of like badminton. And one thing that my manager during that time he told me was that the way you communicate with people, even if they are not able to understand anything, and you show them how this thing is like useful to them, it will improve our performance, it will improve our image as well. So I took that to my second job where I used to work with Enrich and where I focused on providing as much value through my communication to the customers so that we have a lot of footfall in our stores where because of which our revenue drove up. So across, I think Pune sector, our store after 1.5 years after I joined, I think we were doing around 7, 8 digits of revenue per month, something like that. So my manager that really attributed that thing to me, and he's like, customers also feel nice when you call them, when you talk to them, is that they feel nice. So I totally agree that people should start from the shop floor and they should understand how the process works.
The
So
Japanese
moving
have a
on.
term called
Mhm.
gemba,
Yes.
and basically it means where the action happens.
Hmm.
And the action is not happening in air-conditioned corporate boardrooms, where people are sitting and drinking coffee and looking at PowerPoint presentation. The thing really happens, on the field. And therefore, starting with the consumer is a great way to start.
Absolutely, sir. So moving on, what does social mean to you in a corporate and leadership context?
Look, I think it's a very, very powerful tool, because uh, typically what happens when you progress in your career, you tend to fill up your mind with baggage, what I call baggage, which is like you have experiences, you have knowledge, and therefore your brain becomes conditioned. And when you are full of that, you're not able to take in fresh knowledge. You're not able to take in others' point of view. Now, imagine a situation where the world is changing so fast, and particularly for y'all, more than us. We started 35 years back. For us, things change, but things change slowly. For y'all, things are changing rapidly. Uh, so for you, what you really need is to have a mind which is ready to learn, a mind which is ready to unlearn and then relearn. Therefore, be ready to shed the baggage, because what you think is knowledge today, if you fill your head with that and your brain with that, it will be irrelevant tomorrow, and you won't have the ability to take in more knowledge because you're so full of it already, right? And I've seen, because worked with so many cultures in so many places in very, very inclusive and diverse setups, you have to have this mind of being able to learn from everybody. And sometimes we as leaders also suffer from this concept of, okay, I only want people like me in my team. Now that's a terrible concept. Okay. We must actually have people who are smarter than us, people who are very, very different from us, with very different perspectives. And that is when we enable better decisions for the organization. Okay, we went through a course on artificial intelligence, and how to do prompts and querying for on ChatGPT and these other tools. And one of the things that the instructor said is, when you're setting up your persona, set up this whole thing, set it up in a way that it challenges you, because a lot of these algorithms, and most of these algorithms, will keep reinforcing what you're saying, and therefore there isn't enough, I would say, the contrary point of view. So I want somebody in my team who's going to challenge me. I want somebody who's completely diametrically different. Every time I say yes, the person will say no. Not like that, but uh, so having that learning agile mind, having that openness to learn is so powerful. Uh, and what it does is it helps you future proof yourself, because the next couple of decades is going to be very, very different. Forget decades. I mean, it's like the next 5 years is going to be very different. What you're armed with today may become irrelevant in another 5 years, unless you keep abreast. And therefore, it's okay if you don't know today. You cannot know everything. And the good thing about y'all is that, unlike us, where knowledge was scarce and information was very difficult to get, and we had to only look at, let's say, elders, professors, and things like that, today information is a commodity, right? You can get it. You are up to date pretty much on everything in terms of knowledge, events happening, etc. Right? You have algorithms for that. What you need is a mind which is agile. And that's so therefore this concept of Soshin applies to everybody. And as I said again, I apply it to my personal life. I mean, forget about work. And I'm into music, and I do, I started with I started with guitars, and then I picked up the keyboard. And it's that interest in learning which takes you from one step to the other step to the other step, and then you keep moving, right? The other thing is reading. I think today the habit of reading is really, really taking a backseat. And we are all stuck with our digital devices. I would advise folks to, people like you and my colleagues in industry to read. Um, that's really, really a powerful way of absorbing knowledge. It doesn't suck out energy. Honestly, too much with the digital devices, you feel drained, right? But you spend time with a book, you feel energized and charged.
Right, sir. So even I picked up the habit of reading, I think during COVID, 2000, I think 2020 or onwards. So the first book that I ever read was Shoe Dog by Phil Knight. And it really inspired me, yes. And his journey through Japan, how he set up the factory over there, and the thing about Mount Fuji. So have you read that book, sir?
No, I have not, but I've heard
Yes,
of
it's a
it.
beautiful
Yeah.
book. Yes. So that was the first book I ever read. Post that, I was just addicted to reading. So I have a collection of around 150 or 170 books, mostly non-fiction, I would say.
Yeah.
And they revolve around finance, they revolve around self-help, health and fitness. So I can see one in your background by Atul Gawande. So I have read his books as well. Yes, sir.
Yes. Atul
So,
Gawande is one of my favorite authors also. Is really, uh, really inspiring author.
right,
Yeah,
sir.
the habit of learning is applies to all of us, because at the end of the day, the machines are going to, the we need to keep our mind, we need to keep ourselves relevant, and we need to keep ourselves agile. And therefore, Soshin it is.
Right, sir. So another topic about developing yourself that you mentioned in the book was adaptability. So in today's time, how do professionals evaluate when to persist or when to pivot?
Look, I'll give you a short story on adaptability. I after 15 years of working in India, I went to Dubai in a job which was everything, a strategy planning job, which was everything other than the US and Europe. We used to call it AMEA in those days, Asia, Middle East, Africa. And this was quite a challenging, demanding, complex job at 74 markets and things like that. But most importantly, it had my team was somebody from Lebanon, somebody from Turkey, somebody from Guatemala, somebody from Colombia, somebody from China, somebody from the Middle East, somebody from the UK, no Indians. And therefore, my own style of leadership, which I had obviously honed in India, sometimes we, give instructions on the phone, sometimes, we are working late, sometimes we are working on Saturdays and Sundays, and sometimes we are talking in local language, all that stuff, right? Now, none of that worked there. People want to come in early and leave early, right? Uh, mm, I got a lot of feedback in terms of the way I communicate, right? And people preferred email rather than maybe phone calls and things like that. So it was really survive or perish for me at that point in time, adapt or perish. Uh, you know, and therefore sometimes circumstance teaches you why adaptability is so important. So the lesson for me has been, and I have faced that situation many times. This is just one example. In every role that I've done about 20 roles now in different places, all 3 degrees of change, a new role, new stakeholders, maybe new country, culture, city, all that stuff. So the one thing that always stays with me is the fact that in your mind, don't expect the circumstance to change, and don't expect others and your stakeholders to change. You need to change, and you need to adapt yourself to your circumstances. And therefore, the question that you have to ask yourself is, what difference does the difference make? It makes no difference. You may be in a different city, you may be with different stakeholders, right? And I think that's the big piece, if we get in our heads, because life is going to throw us curveballs. Life is going to hand us a certain situation. You may have a tough boss. Maybe you are coming from a place where your boss was very nice. You had a lot of trust with the boss, and he or she was very nice to you, and you had a great relationship, warm relationship. Maybe the boss gave you a lot of empowerment and delegation, and trusted you completely and supported you when you needed it. You have to build all that from scratch in a new place. And maybe you have a very, very demanding boss now who's breathing down your neck, giving you direction rather than inspiration, right? Doesn't trust you at all. And so you feel like a victim. The trick is nobody's going to change and adapt to you, right? So you adapt to the circumstances. This applies for not only employees, but it also applies for leaders. Sometimes the problem is leaders expect everybody to adapt to them, but those leaders don't go too far, because the leadership job is about how to get the best out of others. And you can only get the best out of others if you are inclusive, if you adapt to each individual circumstances, right? And I've seen that many times in my life. So change yourself, otherwise, somebody else will replace you.
Right, sir. So also in the book, you talk about working with others and making use of influence frameworks. So trust accounts and employship to your advantage. So can you explain the audience as to how do these three work?
Let me start with influence first. I think this is a very, very, and I don't know whether you guys talk a lot about influence in your in your curriculum, but this is such a powerful thing in professional life, and um, people who are able to influence, of course, doing it the right way, they go a long distance. And because we are always influencing, every conversation is a moment of influence. This conversation that we are having right now is an influencing moment. A conversation that you are having with a colleague of yours in office is an influence moment. A conversation you're having with your boss is also an influence moment, and so on and so forth. A conversation that you're having with a family member is also. So how do you influence? What's the framework for influencing? And I've got three Greek words: ethos, logos, and pathos, which really form the triangle of influence. Ethos is about credibility. Who are you? Why will people be influenced by you? Now, we don't ponder too much about that. Therefore, my advice to everybody who's in this in building careers is build your leadership ethos. How will people remember you when you are not in that room and people are talking about you? How will people remember you maybe when you have moved on to another organization? And how will your colleagues, ex-colleagues remember you and talk about you? Because you are who you are in an empty room when nobody is watching you. So one of the things that really helps build leadership ethos I have seen in professional life, and it cuts across cultures, is authenticity. If you are a genuine and authentic leader, you earn a lot of respect. So what's your, I would say, if you were a brand, what would you be? Okay. Are you going to be a, are you going to be a Nike? Are you going to be a, you know, Apple? Everybody stands for something. All the brands stand for something, right? Are you going to be Patagonia? What is your leadership ethos, right? That's one. And a lot of times, if the ethos is very high, then people are not going to argue too much with you. Right? Of course, you've got to use your influence in the right way and do things the right way, right? That's very important. So one part is ethos. Second part is logos. Logos everybody has. In India, particularly, we are all very logical people. We are, the argumentative Indian. We always love to share our thoughts. Everybody has two. So if you have 10 people in the room, you'll have 20 different ideas. We are good at that. So no problem with logic. But the third element, which I call pathos, which is the emotional connect, I think is the most powerful piece in this triangle of influence. We use it a lot in our personal lives, but we don't use it enough in professional life. And what I mean by that is in professional situations, most of our interactions are very transactional. I need something from you, I go to you. You need something from me, you come to me. Otherwise, we are, not very close, or we don't interact too much. Those people who are able to go beyond the transactional and build emotional connect with stakeholders, people that you work with, they are able to really go the distance. They are the ones who are able to quickly close decisions. And therefore, focus on that human aspect. And it is going to be more important in the age that is, going to be driven by artificial intelligence, right? So that's the human edge. In this AI world, that's really what is going to differentiate people with, the same level of experience and qualification, etc., etc. Uh, Linked to that is this concept of trust. So the best way to bring it out is every time I've changed jobs, I had to build trust from the scratch. And therefore, in my book, the way I think works is I have a 30, 60, 90-day plan. And in the 30, 60, 90 days, my first job is to get to know people and for people to get to know me. And the way I think of it is like I need to have trust accounts with everybody. So I take a piece of paper, I write down who my stakeholders are. Maybe I know some, and therefore there could be some trusts balances there. But most of the stakeholders are new, and I now make a concerted effort in putting trust monies into those accounts. And how do you create? How do you put that trust money? Go beyond the transactional relationship, back to the pathos point, right? And listen a lot. And I have seen that, when I went to Vietnam, for example, somebody had guided me well that, hey, don't go there and just start talking about India, we have done this, and India, we have done that, and therefore, it's all crap here, and then I'm going to change everything. No, they are a very proud nation, the only ones to have pushed back the Americans. Okay. And they are very hardworking, and they are, so therefore, don't hurt the pride, leverage the pride, right? So I didn't talk about India for 6 months. And it was wonderful, because they were also thinking that, oh, here comes a Indian person, maybe he'll start doing all his other stuff, right, which he had done earlier. I gave them respect, and that built the trust, right? So these are two interlinked things which are very, very powerful, which is influence using pathos, building your credibility, understand what you, and the credibility is also like a glass ball, very difficult to build, but very easy to break. One act of indiscretion, the glass wall breaks, right? And you start from scratch again. Just give me 1 second. I think the battery is a little low. Let me just fix that. Huh?
Sure, sir.
Yeah, I think we are good.
Yeah, hello. So are we good to go?
Yeah, we're good to go.
Okay. So moving forward, thank you for that insight on influence frameworks, trust accounts, and employership in an organization. So talking about how do you get things done as a CFO? So irrespective of the sector or wherever it is, what is the 6D framework or like the 6 Ds of execution that an individual or a CFO or a leader can utilize to that benefit to getting things done in an organization?
Yeah, I think it all starts with, drive for results. And that's the first D in my mind.
Mhm.
And what I mean by drive for results is you need to be a self starter. You need to build an agenda. And then you need to galvanize your resources around you, and then take everybody along you towards that thing. So setting your own agenda is is something which is very, very important in every job, in every role. Otherwise, don't wait for others to set the agenda for you. Set your own agenda. And this, I think, is, this is essential. This is really like the fuel in the tank, right, which keeps the engine running, right? And you have to have the drive for results. You must have that ambition, and you must have that foresight and mindset. I've seen great leaders who have fantastic vision, and they set the context beautifully, and therefore, that's the first D. The second D is about direction. And that's supremely important, because let's say you are in Delhi and you want to go to Chennai, you can't board a flight to Srinagar, right? It might be a great flight, but you're moving in the wrong direction. So strategy is the most important thing, and the first thing that one needs to really focus on. Strategy is about doing the right thing. Execution is about doing things right. So imagine a situation that you have a wrong strategy, but you're executing it well. You are, really, really um, moving in the wrong direction very fast, right? So that makes no sense. So direction is, and there were these, there was a motivational speaker who talked about, as leaders today, what can we learn from the tribal chiefs of the past who were also leaders in a world which was not so sophisticated? So, what were some basic tenets of leadership? What did they do that they became the chief? They did three things. They greeted with intent, they lit the fire every day, and they forgave with ease. The one in the middle, which is about lighting the fire every day, is setting the context. It is the leader's job to set the context. And the context in today's world, in the VUCA world that we live in, is changing every day, right? Sometimes you're grappling inflation. Sometimes you're grappling transaction decline on top line. Sometimes you're grappling socioeconomic and geopolitical issues. Sometimes you're tackling tariff issues or taxation issues, right? Or competition issues, which is happening all the time, right? So then your context keeps changing. How do you set direction, and it's almost like being on the rapids of a river, right? And staying on course. The third D is about discipline. And this D is very important today than it was earlier, because today we have a plethora of choices and we have so much of data. We have data coming out of our ears. Earlier we had, we were data starved, and now we are, swimming in an ocean of data. What to make of all that data is a big issue. There are innumerable choices. Um there was a nice. I was seeing. I don't know whether you, Prakash Iyer, who's done the forward for my book. I saw a nice LinkedIn post from him. So he went to this South Indian food outlet, and then he saw the menu, and the menu was like, 25 different types of dosas and uttapams and so on and so forth. And then he just chose idli sambar. And the moral of the story is that, and it's there, he says that there is a company which actually had, I forget which company now, who had 25 products. Choice 20 gave the consumer, a choice of 25 new products, and sales didn't do too well. They cut all that and made it 5 products, and sales jumped. So that is about discipline. Discipline is about choosing few in a world where you have innumerable choices. And focus plays a very important role in that. And today our minds are so busy with this abundance and this buzz of activity and data and information, and things which come on our phone. You can't see it on the thing. It's like, so learning to focus and learning to be disciplined, making the right choices. Fewer, bigger, better. Okay, I would say that's the mantra. So that's discipline. The fourth D is delegation. Now, when you start, it's okay because you're individual performer, that's fine. But when you get to middle level, when you get to senior level, you will realize that it is not about you, and you cannot do everything alone. For most of my last 10 years, I would say my role has more felt like a coach, like a manager standing outside the football field, and training and coaching and inspiring, and helping others perform on the field. So you have to be a team player. You cannot be a lone wolf, right? Otherwise, you won't go the distance unless you are okay. You're doing coding. My son sometimes tell me, no, no, I think lone wolves are also good. Fine, we you can earn a lot of money coding and things like that. But I mean, he will also realize after a few years that he also needs to work with people, right? And lead people, manage people. So that's important. So that's the fourth D, which is delegation. Uh, and the fifth D is, I've missed one somewhere in the process, but the fifth one, which is very, very important. And as a CFO, I can tell you that is what builds and breaks your ethos. And that's about integrity. So doing it the right way. In life, you will always get curved balls. In life, there will always be, areas of gray. Don't take the shortcut, because ultimately people will remember you for what you did and the decision that you took, and it must be an ethical decision. So therefore, integrity for me and doing it the right way for me is 100% or nothing. And this really is one of the most important things. It's the oxygen that you need to breathe. And I would urge all of you and people who are listening to the podcast, that's the culture that we need to create in corporate India. One, which is foundational pillar, has to be integrity and doing things the right way, right? And the world is not black and white. It is in this area of gray, and it's how people interpret it that makes the difference, right? I've missed one D. I can't recall which one.
So it was decisiveness, if I'm right.
Decisiveness. Yeah, that's
Yes.
true. That's true. So look, I've seen people ask for a lot of data, and they do the why, and still can't decide. And I've seen people who, okay, get, 50% data, boom, decide, right? So no decision is the worst decision. In professional life, you get paid to make decisions. Now, It's okay if you fail or the decision goes wrong, but it's not okay if you are not deciding, because that's the leader's job. That's the professional's job, is to take decisions, right? Sometimes it's a somebody, everybody, nobody thing. Everybody knows that somebody needs to decide, nobody does it, right? So in these situations, raise your hand, you know, take the decisions. It's okay to fail. That's fine, right? So decisiveness is very, very important. I would say the trick is don't wait for 100% data. It'll never be like that. And sometimes it may be too late. By the time you get 100% data, the whole purpose is lost. So 70-30 is good, 80-20 is good. Of course, it's if it's a ethical issue, then there is no 70-30, as I said, it's 100%. Or it's a very, very high impact strategic issue, right? You're going to set up a business in a new country. No, that you need to really spend time on. But otherwise, the kind of work that we do, it's more in the 80-20 zone, right? The 70-30 zone. So
Yes, sir. Okay, thank you so much, sir. Now my teammate Gayatri will be talking about the role of the CFO in an organization.
yeah, sure.
Hi, sir.
Hi,
So
Gayatri.
I majorly wanted to know about how does a corporate, in the ever-changing corporate world, how does a professional navigate? So, like you mentioned, you have been in this industry for almost 3 decades now. And how has the definition of success changed for you over these years?
Look, I think the big change for me is, I would say two, three aspects. One aspect is moving from the individual performance and the individual success to collective success. And therefore, when I started, the definition of success for me was me doing well. The definition of a success for me is my company doing well, our team doing well, the country doing well, the geography that I handle doing well. So that's a big, big change. And as you all embark in your career, you will see that, and you will realize as you get to middle and senior management. So that whole section in the book dedicated towards working with others becomes so important, right? And outcomes and performance will less and less be dependent on you as an individual. It will be more dependent on the people who are around you, your bosses, your teams, your cross-functional peers, and so on and so forth. And therefore, certain things which probably we are not teaching in our, let's say, the institutes today, things like influencing, things like adaptability, things like building trust, right? Maybe in passing you might have something, but I think you need courses for that. Communication, for example, finance is a great function where we need to really up the communication game. If you want to get to CFO, you need to be a fantastic communicator, and it's not just rattling off numbers. It's about telling a story. So that's the first thing, which is moving from individual performance to collective wins. And the mantra now for me is one team, one dream, one goal. It's like, and that's how you rally a large team and an organization. The second thing, when we started at that point in time, just to close the books, etc., or do basic stuff, people would spend inordinate amount of time, and people would stay back late at night, sometimes overnight, just to close the books and do those basic stuff, right? Today, results are done by an outsourced agency. We get our results on day one. So the effort has come down, efficiency has gone up. But I still see that, particularly in finance, we are always busy. We are the ones turning on the lights, we are the ones turning off the lights. So I think success for me now is has changed from being busy to being available. Because really, and again, I'm talking about a company like ours which does brand innovation, makes and deliver. The more we make ourselves available as a finance function to the business, the more effective we are, because finance sees the business end to end, and it sees it with data. And in any meeting or in any forum, we are really the representatives of the shareholder, and I apply a lens in my mind which guides my decision making and gives me the courage of conviction, no matter how senior the folks in the room are, is this shareholder mindset concept. And in PepsiCo, we have this thing called voicing your opinion fearlessly, which is, act like owners. How do you how do you have the owner's view? So keep an empty chair in the meeting room for the owner. And your decision is guided by what would the owner be saying, what would the owner be thinking. In a sole proprietorship organization, family organization, it's okay because the owners are there. But what happens in a multinational company spread over hundreds of countries? How is leadership and ownership connected? And that's where the act like owners concept comes in. So that's the other thing that moving from individual to collective wins, moving from the act of being busy and being satisfied by being busy and working hard to being available. These are a couple of areas where uh, definition of winning has changed. The other thing that I think today, earlier, and then I'm talking CFO now. Earlier, it used to be top line and bottom line, right? So shareholder value creation was all about helping drive top line and helping drive bottom line. Today, that definition has changed to include a third dimension, which is to make the planet a better place. So sustainability is now a big part of the shareholder value creation trifecta right now. So it's top line, bottom line, and lifeline, which is more the environment, right? And as CFOs, we need to uh, embrace that. We need to ensure that those discussions happen in the business forums. We need to ensure that we are able to fund it because it is a big investment. Sometimes the ROIs are not great, but in my mind, sustainability is a license to operate. So we better it's a very strategic thing. People who are embracing sustainability, imagine, and I don't know whether you guys have heard of this company called Patagonia, right? Amazing company, and read it up. Their entire brand proposition is built on this goodness and a sustainability agenda, right? To giving back. And people today and consumers today are willing to pay a higher price for products of companies which follow sustainable practices. So it is a strategic advantage going forward. So that's the other change from top line, bottom line to top line, bottom line, and what I call lifeline, which is making the planet a better place.
Yes, sir, got it. And I think to incorporate all the elements that you have mentioned, one has to be emotionally intelligent as well. Which brings me to my next question. How does being emotionally intelligent become or translate to being a effective CEO today?
I think in the in the age that is ahead of us, and for folks like you, I think the next decade, couple of decades, is going to be about less about IQ, more about EQ, which is the topic that you we are discussing right now. And the other one I will add is RQ, which is resilience quotient. So combination of emotional quotient and resilience quotient is going to drive success and successful careers for professionals, because intelligence is going to be a commodity now. It's not your own intelligence, and I see it in meetings today. It's not what people know or we as leaders know, but it's what is available on on our devices, right? On the artificial intelligence algorithms. So intelligence is on the press of a button. Oh, it is a commodity. It's available to everybody. Everybody has that, right? How do you differentiate? I think the differentiation will come from emotional intelligence, and it will come from resilience, being resilient. So uh, think about COVID, for example. COVID was a great uh, learning for all of us. uh, I think what really got dialed up at that point in time is this whole aspect of empathy, and people realize that it's just not about uh, getting results, but it's also about people, and it's also about who's getting the results, right? And how you're getting the results. And therefore, post COVID, I see a lot of focus on what we are just discussing, which is the emotional quotient and things like empathetic leadership. Going forward, those are going to be very, very important. So I would again urge people to focus on EQ, and that is something that we also need to discuss in our curriculum, and we need to discuss in our courses, have case studies and have use cases on EQ. Uh, and therefore, one of the simple things about EQ is understanding others' perspective. And again, when I went to Vietnam, I was giving that example. Uh, I used to talk very fast and I use fancy words and I always prided myself on my English. And within the first month or so, my team was totally demoralized. And they were local Vietnamese people, some Japanese people. Until one day, my CEO, who was who came to me and said, "What are you doing? You are writing all these fancy emails and great English, etc. But nobody's understanding that." And I realized how important that powerful statement was because I was looking at it from my perspective and I was getting frustrated. But from them, they were actually translating my English into Vietnamese or maybe Japanese and translating it back to Japanese or Vietnamese and then answering me back. So while I was on my third thought, they hadn't yet grasped the first thought. And so that was not demoralizing them and therefore productivity was suffering. And so after that, I slowed down, I clarified things, got everybody's point of view. So this is empathy. This is understanding others' perspective. Once you do that, then the magic happens. Okay. This is a great example of what empathetic leadership is and what we need to do more of today, right? Uh, so yeah, I think build listening is the other one. We are all, and this is again in India. I see a lot of um, I don't know about what happens on the campus, but in professional life and in corporate India, I was just saying earlier that if you have one topic, there are going to be so many views, and everybody wants to push their own view and opinion. We must listen. And one of the powerful tools of empathetic leadership is listening. A lot of times I have seen if there is a problem, if you listen, you have already solved half the issue because a lot of the problem is emotional, maybe, right? And today people also need people to listen to them, and therefore this whole thing about mental health and one of the things that I want the book to do is to act like a mentor, right? Because sometimes you don't have somebody to talk to, right? So that's the other idea. So empathy, very, very important in the world that is coming for sure.
Yes, and I think majority of people does talk about communication skills, but many doesn't realize communication skills is not about speaking alone. It's also about listening to what the other person have to say. And so, like you were mentioning, being emotionally intelligent often means being empathetic, which can sometimes lead to relying on intuition during decision making. So, how do we find that balance, taking decision based on intuition and data, especially during uncertain times?
Look, it depends on the situation. I would say uh, in situations where there is a strategic topic being discussed or the stakes are really, really high, there I would not get too much of emotion and too much of gut into taking the decision. And there I would rely more on data and take my time rather than jumping into a decision, right? Um, and those are high stakes strategic calls, high stakes strategic decisions. In operating decisions, it is always a combination of data and gut. Now, while taking decisions, I will keep emotion out of it. And this is something that we need to learn from our Western counterparts. And I've worked with, I've been in an American company for a long time. I really, really love the professional approach to things. There is nothing personal in it. It is completely professional. So people keep emotions out of any professional discussion. And in a conversation where there are 2 points of views, finally, when there is one point of view where everybody agrees to, the person who had a contrary point of view, when he or she walks out of the room, is part of the same team, is not holding any grudge or not still thinking about it or getting emotional about it, right? So uh, being professional in decision making, being objective in decision making is important. But I think gut plays a role. And gut plays a role because it will never be 100% data, and it'll never be, everything will not be available in a timely way. That's why experiences matter. That's why it's like use cases in life. If you go through, and that's the importance of experience. And you've been there, you've been seen a situation, right? And you can apply some of the learnings from that. Maybe you can prevent the same mistake that you made earlier. And therefore, uh, using a good combination of data and gut is I think what the doctor ordered. But it depends on the situation. If it's a big strategic thing, that one we will always wait. And I am a strong believer in getting contrary views, analyzing the risks, what will happen, what can go wrong. My question there always is, at the end of the day, as a CFO, what can go wrong? Give me two instances where this thing can completely go wrong, right? We have a core strategy, but why will it fail? And what do we do when it fails, right? So risk analysis is important in those cases.
Got it, sir. So I think at the end of the day, along with experience, it's also your emotional intelligence that comes into play to judge which aspect to move. Is it intuition or data that you have to more focus on while
Of
taking a
course. I mean
strategy?
that yeah. You will. It's not a science. This is an art,
Hmm.
and therefore you will form that, I would say, nice triangulation ability of data, gut, emotion. Now, emotion a lot is also for interpersonal situations. I mean, there could be business issues or there could be people issues, right? There could be motivation issues, or there could be conflict amongst individuals, right? That's where I think emotional intelligence plays a big part. That's where the pathos I was talking about plays a big part. I have seen situations where people are writing hundreds of emails on a small topic, and then suddenly two people who have very high trust, they talk to each other and the problem is solved. So those
True.
are places where when you're dealing with people, that's where the emotional intelligence comes in. But you're right, emotional intelligence also comes in terms of judging what to apply and how much to apply where, right?
Yes, sir, absolutely. So, in the lights of empathy, emotional intelligence, and even resilience, what advice would you give to MBA students and finance students like us who wants to build a career in strategic finance leader?
Look, I would say focus on the learning, because ultimately, if you want to be a senior finance professional, you must have strong foundations. And what is important right now is getting those learning experiences rather than getting the fancy designations, or maybe you have something in mind. Uh, the strategy should not be how soon I will get to that. The strategy should be I should be ready to succeed when I get that. And therefore, if your foundation is weak, even if you get there, firstly, your chances of getting there are not great. And even if you get there, you may not succeed because you haven't built the right foundation. And and careers are therefore something that you keep building on rather than jumping. Uh, and these are careers are a long distance race. They are a marathon. They are not a sprint. So if you sprint, then you will be out of breath very soon, right? The other thing we need to remember is there will always be people ahead of you and there'll always be people behind you. So if you're always comparing yourself with others, you will be a very unhappy person. So my advice to finance professionals and people, let's say, who want to be aspiring to be CFO, build your readiness for higher levels of responsibility. That is your job. And if you have the right combination of performance, aptitude, and most importantly, attitude, then you will surely going to make it. When I look at people for promotions or look at people for jobs, etc., I focus more on the attitude, because everybody's CV is okay, qualification is there, chartered accountant, MBA finance, whatever it is, institute, some good institute, all that is great. How do I differentiate, right? And the differentiation is comes from attitude, and there are certain attitudes which I want to call out. The ability to take on outside of comfort zone roles, Some people love to stay in the comfort zone, and it's okay, nothing wrong in that. But you won't progress too far if you stay in your comfort zone. You have to be comfortable getting out of the comfort zone. That's one. Second is learn to fail. You are going to fail. I hate people who just keep saying, "Oh, I'm great and I succeed at everything and I have had a fantastic run." No, tell me about your failure. When have you failed? What have you learned from your failure? Those people who can talk about their failures and what they have learned from the failures, I like that. Okay, so that shows resilience. So, and learning, which is the first thing that I said, Soshing. So focus on the learning, focus on the experience, focus on fail fast, no problem, no problem at all. It's better you fail now than you fail when you are a senior person, right? And better you learn now than and then you get that foundational experience. When you get to the 30th floor, you're not going to build the foundation again, right?
True.
So that's what I would focus. And the other thing I would, urge people who are building their careers in finance, particularly, numbers are one thing, uh, but people, it's going to be all about people. And therefore, to be a good CFO, you must know how to work with people. And for that, it's all those aspects of communication. And communication is not about English. Communication is about understanding the audience. Communication is about being sharp, being to the point. We are good at writing essays, but we are very terrible at writing essays. Maybe that's why we need ChatGPT. But how well can we write essays? How can I have a 100-slide presentation in one slide? So finance people need to communicate better, right? And because we are great with numbers, we aren't that great with our ability to tell stories. And learn the pathos. That's very, very important. Learn to build trust. That's very, very important.
Yes, I got it. So I think it is a big myth in the finance world that finance people just need to know numbers and communication is not important. But I think this will be an eye opener to many students of finance that communication is as important as knowing your numbers. Thank you so much, sir, for all the advice that you have given. I would like to welcome my teammate Reshma to take over.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Reshma.
Hi, sir. Thank you, Gayatri. Now we'll shift the focus on to how professionals build credibility and navigate different cultural contexts. So you have emphasized that professionals should consciously invest in their trust account in the first 90 days in a new role. Could you elaborate on how one can practically build that trust early on?
So I think I touched upon that in an earlier conversation, but I think the way to do that is, to sit down with your stakeholders and understand their context. What do they want? What are their challenges? And second is to listen to maybe your team members, maybe your peers, your cross-functional colleagues, understand their expectations. So before jumping into giving your own conclusions and giving your own solutions, listening and understanding the other's perspective goes a great way in building the trust that I talked about, right? So it's less about you, but it's more about others, and really investing and spending time, because when you're getting into a new job, obviously you have to learn the job. Most of us jump into the job and spend most of our time just on the job itself. But I think the bigger part of it is understanding our stakeholders. And so if you focus on understanding stakeholders along with learning the job will happen. We are intelligent people. We are not doing any rocket science here in the corporate world. We are not NASA doing, building rockets, right? So focus on understanding your customers and spend time understanding your customers. The other thing is the customers will also understand you then. You are forming a good impression. You are creating that positive, pathos with them, right? Emotional connect, which is beyond the transaction, right?
Yes, so that's really insightful. And because initially, when we're entering the corporate world, we focus on showcasing our technical skills, but it's more about understanding customers and our stakeholders. So, one of the unique aspect in your book is the concept of employship. You've
Yeah.
told that the success of an organization is less about leadership and more about employship. So, what does that mean in practice, especially in large hierarchical organizations?
Yeah, look, I think before you become a leader or before you become a good leader, you have to be a good employee. And 95% of the people in a company are employees. What is their role? What is being a good employee? And that's the whole thing about this chapter that I have on employeeship. And there are a few things which are very powerful. There are 10 tenets of employeeship which I talk about in the book, but I'll talk about a few which I feel are really, really important. Things like which you would like to, put on a mirror of your restroom and look at it every day. The first one is bringing your best self to work. And what I mean by bringing your best self to work is bringing your head, your heart, and your hand to the job. Now, your head and your hand will come because otherwise you won't survive, right? But it's really the heart that makes the difference. How do you feel getting up in the morning and really coming to work? And it's about everything that you do in life. But if you are in a career, you are stuck with that career for 35 years, 40 years, maybe, right? So you must be passionate about it and you must bring your passion to the workplace. And that's, and therefore, the first job of an employee, the first employeeship tenet is bringing your best self to work, head, heart, and hand to the job every day. Second is having this shareholder mindset versus boss is always right mindset. Because when you join a company, and I have done the same thing. When I started off, I was always ready to please my bosses and it was always upward management, right? What's the boss thinking about me and my seniors, correct? But you will realize people who are really respected and people who build long-term successful careers as employees, they also have this ability to have the shareholder mindset. And maybe that is different from what the boss is saying. And therefore, you should be the person who should be raising your hand and saying, sorry, I don't agree with this in a nice way, but why don't we consider this? Maybe this is going to be better. So instead of just going with the common pool or what the senior person is saying, if you have a different point of view which you think is more impactful, the right one, don't hesitate to voice your opinion. So voicing your opinion fearlessly and having that shareholder mindset versus the boss is always right side. That is the second good tenet of employship. The third good tenet of employship is being a good team player. And everybody likes good team players. And I can tell you when I look at people, uh, there may be somebody who's brilliant, but is not good in team dynamics. Is not a good team player. Maybe he doesn't share information. Maybe he's not trusted by others. Good at his own work, his or her own work, but not able to collaborate. But as I said, in professional life, you don't succeed individually. You succeed as a team, as an organization, as a function, as a business, right? Therefore, you have to be a good team player. And everybody likes good team players. Everybody likes somebody who not only is good at his or her own job, but also helps others, also collaborates, right? Passes the ball around rather than just running with the ball himself or herself, right? So that's the third tenet. The fourth tenet is some aspects which we have talked about before. We need people who are learning agile, who exemplify sourcing, right? Who are adaptable, right? And the other aspect is we always look for people who are high on integrity. As I said again, that is table stakes, the oxygen that we breathe, and that builds credibility over a long period of time. So these are a few things that are there in that chapter on employship, apart from some others. This is everybody's job. This will be your job when you get into a workplace. This will also be, people who are in middle management, their job when you get into a workplace. And if you want to become a good leader, you have to be a good employee. So read the chapter on employeeship, and I would urge others to do it. This is meant for everybody, and it's everybody's job. Uh, and it's a little different from what we discuss mostly on leadership.
Yes, so it gives us like a framework on how employees, like how we as employees should be in an organization. Yes. So moving on, sir, you have worked across different geographies, in different cultures and economies. So how has the role of a CFO changed or differs across different geographies and cultures?
I think the role of the CFO ultimately is somebody who creates shareholder value, right? I mean, that job and that role, overarching role, is not changing. And in today's context, as I was discussing in the earlier section, it is a trifecta of top line, bottom line, and lifeline sustainability, right? So that is uniform wherever you go, whichever part of the world. But what is different is when you're in your home country, in your home culture, there is a certain way of doing things. And that certain way of doing thing manifests itself in language. Sometimes we just speak in Hindi, for example, right? Or whatever language you connect with, right? When you get into a different culture in a diverse setup, when I went to Dubai, where I had so many people, and apart from my team, my boss was somebody from the US, and her boss was somebody from Italy, and the supreme boss was the Jordanian. So, I mean, there you have to have this inclusive mindset, which sets you apart. You have to have that inclusive mindset. How can you work with diverse perspectives? And if the goals and objectives are common, then the language doesn't matter, right? Then it's only about things like EQ, like we discussed, understanding the other's perspective. And once you understand the other's perspective, then it really doesn't matter whether you are in India, in Chicago, or in Tokyo. Right? The same objectives are there, and the same objective for a CFO, which is that value creation, is there, right? It's how you're working with people. And again, back to that question of don't expect the circumstances to change for you. You have to adapt to the circumstances. If you have that adaptable mindset, then you succeed everywhere, right? That's the thing. So being the difference between being in your home country and working elsewhere is this cultural sensitivity, is this inclusive mindset, is this adaptability. Those make the difference.
Yes, so like the main principles remain universal, but the way of communication, decision making styles, those
Yeah.
vary. Yes. So the need to like learn and adapt so quickly must have led to, setbacks or missteps along the way. So could you share an instance of a setback or a failure in your journey that has taught you like a defining lesson for you, sir?
There are many, but I will tell you, and I think I told the story when I was on the campus, but I'll say it again for the podcast. Is I went to Vietnam, and it was a very different country, and my family had not joined me then. Uh, and within the first 7 days, the head of IT came to me and said, the systems have all crashed. There is a virus which has gone into the system. So I said, okay, go fix it. You are the head of IT, and he was a local person, and he said, no, I have not faced anything like this. You are the boss. You tell me what to do. And within 15 minutes, my CEO came and said, the systems are down, sale is not happening. What are you doing about it? So I really felt like a victim. I felt like, a deer caught in the headlights, middle of the road, and completely frozen. I felt like a failure, and I was like that for 2 days. Uh, and then I realized that unless I do something about it, nothing is going to happen. And so I moved from this mental state of feeling like a victim to what I call the karna kya hai stage. I mean, what is to be done? Something has to be done. And then I called a few of my friends who were also senior people in other companies and in Vietnam, and they said, our systems are also down. So then I felt a little better because, in Dale Carnegie's word, I'm okay, you're okay, is good, is great. I'm not okay, you're not okay, also is not bad. So I was not okay, but if somebody else is also not okay, that made me feel good. And I realized I wasn't the only one. And then I started acting on the Karna Kya Hai. And we got the systems up in a few days. But the moral of the story here is really what is the definition of resilience. It is when you fall down, how do you get up? When an adverse situation hits you, how does your mind react? And the lesson for me has been the first reaction is feeling like a victim. How soon can you move from feeling like a victim to karna kya hai and then using it as an opportunity is what resilience is all about. And in life, there are hundreds of examples like this you will face, professional life and in personal life. So, learning from failure are the strongest learnings that one can have. And I can guarantee that you will fail. All of us will fail. And I have failed, I've taken decisions which have gone wrong, but we have all learned from it and we have got better from those learnings, right? But what's important is how the brain reacts and the mind reacts. And that's where resilience comes in.
Yes. True, sir. Like most of the time, we hear about the wins or the strategies that worked, but it's these failures and reflections that actually teach us the most. And resilience is what helps us in these kind of situations. Awesome, sir. So we've explored some deep ground. Now let's shift gears and we'll have a rapid fire round. So quick
Okay.
responses, whatever comes to your mind, sir. Okay. Here we go. So, one finance myth you wish young professionals would stop believing.
Move from the numbers to telling the stories behind the numbers.
Yes. Oh. So, one metric you'd use to measure success beyond money.
Trust.
Okay. So, a financial decision that changed your career trajectory.
Oh, plenty of wrong individual investments, which has changed me. So, losing money and making
Okay.
wrong financial decisions, learn from that.
Yeah. Okay. So, numbers or intuition, which guides you more as a CFO?
I think 80-20, 70-30 is the zone that I operate in. I don't look for 100-0. I'm happy with 70-30 or 80-20.
Okay. Interesting. So, one of your favorite book apart from the ones you've written.
The Habit of Winning, Prakash Iyer, who's also written the foreword, really, and he's an ex-PepsiCo person. The other one is The
Yeah.
Speed of Trust by Stephen Covey, and there are so many books, of course. Some of them are non-business books also. So yeah.
Okay. So, a quote or mantra that you live by.
The Japanese have a saying called Yatte Minare, and that, if you look at it, it broadly translates to the Nike ad of "Just Do It." So, and what it really means is, like, when in doubt, decide. Don't don't just stay frozen. Right?
Oh,
It's okay to fail rather than just not deciding. If you don't decide, then you don't give yourself a chance to succeed.
yes, that's really interesting. So, what's one thing that you'd want B schools to teach students that they
Oh,
don't currently?
all these things that we talk about, we need to have courses on adaptability. We need to have courses on learning from failure. We need to have courses on resilience. We need to have courses on influencing. Uh, so these are things which are life skills, not only professional success skills, and we need to talk about that.
Yes, yes. So, and finally, if you could write an additional chapter for the career edge, what would it be titled?
I think that chapter would be a chapter on gratitude because I have learned so much from so many people that I can probably not a chapter, I can write a whole book on that. And I'm really grateful to all those people who I have learned from over the years. So it would be a chapter on that.
All right. Thank you so much, sir. Like this has been like incredibly insightful conversation. So I would hand it over to Marazban.
Thank you.
Hello, am I audible, sir?
Yeah.
So I
Yeah,
had
you're
one last, yeah,
yeah,
hello.
yeah, go on.
I had one question which one of my friends told me to ask you was that which finance roles do you think will completely disappear in the next decade? So there is one startup, I think, from MBA grads in Wharton. They're two Indians, okay? So what they developed is it's called Index. So it is like an AI agent which can plug into Excel. It can, I mean, read data, it can synthesize, it can give reasoning based on that data. So basically, what it does is, I mean, the fear of everyone is that it will entry-level jobs in finance or else in, I think, banking would go away. So what is your view on that, basically?
Look, I think rather than fearing um, what AI will do negatively, I think AI will help us move from being busy to being available. And those people who and finance, and I'm talking finance because I see finance. And for example, when we were growing up, I wish we had those support. I wish that everything we didn't have to do ourselves. I think our lives as finance will improve because we will get a lot of the, I would say the donkey work done by, the algorithms, the systems, the agents, and those kind of things. Doesn't mean that we are going away. We are going to be available. I don't think as a function we are available. And this is going to help us. So the smart finance professionals are going to come in and use AI as an ally to make themselves available, to go and listen to the customer. Imagine how impressive that will be as the
Mhm.
young finance intern or management trainee finished. I mean, is doing all the work, but also spending maybe 10 days in the market. Wow, that is superb, great. So it will give you much more power to impact and influence the others. So you're getting into a very, very exciting phase. Don't fear. I think it's a massive opportunity. Don't feel like a victim. You need to move from victim to opportunity.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. I hope he sees this and he gets the answer. So I think we'll wrap it up for today.
Yep.
And today's episode gave us a look into how finance leaders sees careers as an investment that grow through trust, consistency, and adaptability. And if today's conversation resonated with everyone who's watching this, please grab your copy of The Career Edge. And it is full of timeless insights from one of India's respected finance leaders. And until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep finding your edge. Thank you.